Hey, welcome to Steve's Place. It's Sunday night, 6 p.m., 25th of January, and welcome you all here. Um, Tonight we're going to have a very interesting show on remote viewing. I don't know if any of you seen the all-seeing eye uh, on the pyramid on the back of a dollar bill, but kind of symbolizes what we're talking about. Remote viewing, and and I believe that even back then they had such a thing. But anyway, I digress. I'd like to welcome you all here to Steve's Place, and I'd like to encourage if you're not a member of the YouTube channel, I encourage you to join. It's $9.99 a month. It helps us. Uh, it helps us stay alive, stay afloat, and everything. And all the money that we get from that actually goes back into it. Right now, I have about a couple $100 worth of, a couple hundred videos that need to be converted from VHS tapes into DVDs. That's my next project. As soon as we get moved into our new location, uh, this week will be a major move. We're moving everything out of storage to our new hacienda here. This huge place we're in. Huge compared to what we had. Anyway, I'm looking forward to being able to work on everything again, as opposed to working vertically. And but again, I encourage everyone to join the YouTube channel. We have a lot of videos, and the easy way to get here to join is just go to our main webpage, TeslaTech.info. Go to the yellow box and click on the TeslaTech channel, and you can subscribe, which is free, and you can also join, which is $9.99 a month. It gives you access to everything. We also have two directories on our yellow box here: the conference directory and the speaker directory. The conference directory has all the conferences that we have uh, at YouTube up there, and then we also have a speaker directory. If you know your speaker, you can go and see if his name is up there. It's a work in progress, getting all these playlists put together. But you can click on it, get all the uh, videos that we have of that speaker on a list there too as well. So it's two different ways of searching. I want to encourage you to check the stuff out. We got slammed again by YouTube, and so they took another video down. I'd like to encourage you all to, if you like a video, you may want to contact me and get the DVD. The DVDs, we have a DVD of every video that we have online. We have a DVD of for sale. And of course, we have also a link here to Steve's Place. Anyway, like I say, if you get a chance, please join. It's like a $9.99 a month, gives you global access, 24/7. So please, if you get the chance, please join. Okay, and without further ado, one more thing is we have our conference coming up August 12th to 16th. We have open registration right now. If you want to register for it, we're doing it for half price. That means instead of $400, you're looking at $225. Instead of $450. A great opportunity to save a lot of money. Plan ahead, and the stuff becomes very affordable. You can do things like share rooms with people and that to keep costs down. We provide a meal, or not really a meal, but we have substantial food every night, at the conference. I haven't had anyone starve to death. The hotel has a breakfast for people staying at the hotel. So, yeah, come on to the conference. I'm sure you have a great time. I guarantee you will have a great time. And more likely, you're going to meet a lifelong friend there, someone that you never knew that shared your same interests. Anyway, without further ado, I'm going to bring up Vernon. So, hello, Vernon.
Hey, Steve. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's good seeing you again. Uh, Vernon's been with us for, I don't know, 20 years or so.
Yeah, I think it's actually 24.
It's a long time, a long
Yep.
time. He
Yep.
lives in a place in the middle of nowhere called West Cliff, uh, way up on the right up against the Continental Divide. You know,
Yes, indeed.
yeah,
I look out my back door and there's a bunch of 14ers in the distance and snow-capped mountains 7 months out of the year. It's a beautiful place.
and for someone like me, it's a very cold place. You know, so high up. You
Yeah.
know, you must be what 8, 9,000 feet. You think?
Yeah, my house is at 8,600 feet and it was -8 degrees last night. Pretty
Oh,
brutal.
and I thought 40 was brutal.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I'm wearing my wool shirts today, so it gets chilly. Even in my office, it's a little chilly.
So anyway, Vernon's a real expert on plasma, and one of our people were making comments about this kaolinite that you talked about, you know, the Orma stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Kaolinite is a very interesting mineral. Very high density of Ormus materials, and it's an ether energy accumulator. So
Yeah.
it's fun to play with.
Okay. And this guy wanted to know if you could possibly elaborate or on kaolinite. How does he recommend to consume it? Yeah. I
Well,
don't.
I don't recommend consuming kaolinite, but what you can do is you can use it as a you can create a sleeve, a cylinder of it, and treat your drinking water in it. I don't know what the metallic properties of different kaolinites are gonna have in it. I wouldn't drink it, but like just like you would do I don't know if anybody remembers the John Maluski water treatment deals where he created a sleeve, a cylinder filled with black sands. We found very similar effects from actually using a white kaolinite powder in there and putting water inside of it. I actually I use these Voss water bottles and slide them down inside of a cylinder, so all my drinking water is actually treated with excuse me with orgone energy. So it feels good. It helps keep me healthy. So this is a good thing.
Okay, but tonight we're going to be talking about remote viewing, and I'm just going to turn it over to you, and you can just take off wherever you want.
Okay, so um, in the last several years, oh, don't put that one up yet. That's a template. I'll talk about that in just a little bit. In the last several years, I have started practicing remote viewing, studying and learning everything I can about remote viewing, and I've learned that it's a pretty powerful and dynamic tool for some of our science work that we're doing. And so, for some of the people that maybe have not heard of it before, it's actually moving into the mainstream. Heck, Glenn Beck talked about it a couple months back when he interviewed the author of a book called Penetration, which was interesting. We in the remote viewing field have strong feelings about the author, but um, so it's moving into the mainstream, and essentially, this is a technique developed by the United States military in conjunction with Stanford Research Institute way back in the 70s for information gathering. And when you say remote viewing, like people have usually have a preconceived concept about what it is, and the reality is a lot of those preconceived concepts are wrong. Remote viewing is really a excuse me. Remote viewing is a technique that allows just about anybody to find and gather information at a distance, at a without direct knowledge of what they're actually viewing. As a matter of fact, the protocols that were developed were designed to keep the viewer from knowing anything about the subject or the target outside of the remote viewing session until long after the session was done. So Steve and I were talking previously offline about the possibilities that that remote viewing has to do with quantum entanglement and the method of tapping into this collective subconsciousness of the universe. And all of those could be correct. There's a lot of there's some remote viewers that are working in that field, and they're developing hypotheses based off of the what they're seeing and what they're experiencing when they do their remote viewing. But today, this is kind of a dry run to put together some information and kind of make my thought process cohesive and get ready for the conference itself, which I'll have a larger presentation and a little bit more refined. But today's just going to be kind of the dry run for that. So remote viewing is it. There's, like I said, there's a lot of preconceived notions about what remote viewing actually is, and the definition of remote viewing, and there's different types of remote viewing, but what we're going to be talking about today is a structured blind protocol for generating impressions about a target or a subject at a distance. And there's different protocols for that. We call it remote viewing, and underneath that umbrella, there's going to be controlled remote viewing or coordinate remote viewing. There's going to be my personal favorite, transdimensional remote viewing. And there's some overlap here, but really it's going to depend on what you use, and what you gravitate to is really going to depend on what you resonate with. Some people like the very structured remote viewing protocols, and that's what I always gravitate to, because sometimes things like astral projection are going to be called remote viewing, and there's some elements there, but astral projection and psychic impressions are oftentimes very they can be subjective. And so the remote viewing protocols kind of refine things down and allow you to create a structure that you're going to gather information in. And so over the last few years, I have started working with remote viewing, not just to go out and say, okay, I want to remote view this target, and it turns out to be the Eiffel Tower, or this target and it turns out to be the Sphinx in Egypt. But I said, what if we could use remote viewing for our science research in and of itself as a tool, a methodology to gather more data and to give us the next steps, the next piece to the puzzle. So that's where I excuse me, that's where I'm approaching this from. And Steve, could you put up one of the pictures there? Yeah, so this is what we call a template, and it's going to, I wonder if I can zero in on some things here. Let me see if I can make this larger. Okay. Let me see if I can move it around. So as I mentioned earlier, one of the requirements for remote viewing is that you're going to be blind to the target. And what that means is that the remote viewer does not have a preconception about what they're going to be remote viewing. The only thing that a remote viewer actually gets is what we call a tag, which I like the Ed Dames and John Vivanco method of using two sets of four-digit numbers. Different people use different tags, and basically what this tag is, it's really specific to yourself. It's like putting a label on a file in a filing cabinet. and this, you're going to put this label on the file in the filing cabinet, and it's going to act like a quantum hook that connects your consciousness to whatever you're remote viewing. So that tag is going to be just 8 random numbers. They are just going to be a random number. And as I said, the remote viewer is blind to the actual target. So this creates complications when it comes to a single remote viewer working on a project. What I've done is I've created a little protocol for myself, and I have a spreadsheet with 8 random numbers on one side, and excuse me, and then I have then right next to that I have the tag that is something that I'm researching. So for instance, when I go in, and let me pull up a fun one here. So Steve, can you see the little guy with the hat? Is that visible on your screen? Let me see if I can pull this up here. I'm working on it, guys. Doesn't seem to be popping up. Okay, so I will use one of the other pictures then. So in my research and formative days, I read the book, the Book of Five Rings by Miyamoto Musashi, who was considered one of the greatest swordsmen in Japan that ever lived. And I wanted to kind of understand what motivated him to write the book, if there was any information that was maybe missing from the book, because he implies a lot of things and then never actually talks about them. And so what you're seeing here is the beginning of a project to kind of dive deep into Miyamoto Musashi's mindset. And so what I did was, remember I mentioned that I had 2 columns of numbers, and and beside that I had the descriptor. And basically the descriptor is something along the lines of, the remote viewer will remote view the mindset of Miyamoto Musashi when he was writing the Book of Five Rings. And when, like I said, I need to be completely blind to this target. So what I did was, I've got those 2 sets of numbers. I wrote out that target description. The remote viewer will remote view a certain set of information. And then what I did was I printed it off on a sheet, and it kind of looks like this right here. Has the numbers on the front side and the target on the back side. And I just put that into a file folder, and I forgot about it. I forgot about it for about 6 months. And I did this. I created a list of over 100 targets with the numbers, 8 random numbers, and then the descriptor, just as I showed you there. And then after about 6 months of gathering these targets, I just would go in and I'd pull a random file folder. I don't know what's in it. I don't know what's on the list. I don't know what I'm remote viewing. And I sit down and I start working through the protocol. And this actually is a good picture to zero in on. And so I can show you some of the steps of the protocol. So the very first thing I'm going to do, and there's one step before that, but it's kind of outside the scope of what we're doing here. Very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write down those 8 random numbers. And in that moment, it's really, really profound. And this is why it comes down to that quantum coherence that we mentioned earlier. I write down those 8 numbers, and immediately my body responds with a movement, and that movement becomes this ideogram. The ideogram is a trained response to specific energetic stimulus. Okay, so this ideogram happens to be the ideogram that relates to a life form, which is apropos because we see that I'm remote, as I already mentioned, I'm remote viewing a life form. I'm remote viewing Miyamoto Musashi. So my body responds, and it's a very, very quick motion. There is no thought. It transcends conscious thought. It dives deep into the relationship between the human and the universe. I write out the ideogram, and then the next step is I come over here and I start describing the ideogram. And this may seem a little bit pedantic, but what you're really doing is you're deepening the connection between you and the target. You are absorbing that information, and it's going into your consciousness, your subconsciousness really, and you're deepening that connection. We call it time on target. You're spending time and getting deeper and deeper into the relationship between you and what you're remote viewing. As I describe it, then I'm going to identify it. I am remote viewing a sentient being. I'm remote viewing something sentient. Then the process comes over here, and you start just writing it out. You just start writing out your impressions. You start writing out what you're feeling, what you're experiencing in that moment. And you'll notice that there's some pretty intense wording here. Wet, purpose, hatred, anger, exhausted, hunted, last stand, life forms circling, eyes in the dark, metal in hand. And what I'm seeing here as we zoom back out is I'm seeing these life forms. I start to draw this out after I've gone through and I've experienced these descriptors, and these are thoughts, these are words that just roll into my head as I'm exploring that connection with that target. And I'm feeling like there's some type of structure here. There's a person. This is the person that I'm remote viewing, and there are people surrounding him, and they're encircling him. And so let's go to the next one. I'm wondering if, Steve, I apologize. Let me pull up another one here and reshare my screen. Share screen. And I have to apologize because there was we've had some power outages, so I didn't get to do all of the things that I wanted to do to get ready for this presentation today. But what you see here is the next level of this of the excuse me, of my remote viewing session. When I gather all the data, it looks like they were outside, they've gone into a room, and they have actually engaged in some type of combat. The descriptors that I had in other pages describe some type of combat, fighting for their lives, fighting for his life. And what I figured out as I did a couple of these sessions was that Miyamoto Musashi had survived many duels and some assassination attempts, and I was actually seeing the assassination attempt on Miyamoto Musashi, and had conveyed that in these sketches and in the descriptors. And so I realized that he was trying to convey to people in his book, The Book of Five Rings, how he survived that, how he actually lived through that event. And he created an entire fighting style around that experience. So it was really, so this was just a project that I wanted to see about one of my personal, maybe a hero, I guess you could call him. but it was very interesting to actually do a deep dive and see what was excuse me, what he was actually thinking and experiencing when he wrote that book. So let's go to another one here. So another one that I wanted to show was it's not, like I said, I apologize. Some of my pictures didn't come across because I had to do this at the last minute because we had some power outages because of the snow and cold. But another one that I did was the because I study alchemy. I think we talked about that last time I was on the show. I wanted to remote view the cross at Hendai, which has a lot of alchemical symbology and a lot of esoteric significance. And so when I did when I remote viewed the cross at Hendai, I had a very interesting experience wherein, let me pull this up here. I didn't know what I was really seeing when I was remote viewing this, and I ended up sketching this diagram. And let me go to another one. I ended up sketching this diagram first, and what I'm seeing is a burial shroud and a tomb, and then I end up sketching an interesting entrance with a door here and columns and a peaked roof. And then when excuse me, let's see if this one comes up. Is that one? Let me see if that one's being displayed. Oh, I need to share a different one here. Let me share this one. Let me share the next one real quick here. There we go. So this was the image internally of the chapel that the Cross of Hendai sits right outside of, and you see it's very, very similar to that image that I had actually sketched with an object, excuse me, an object, or excuse me, a picture of a being up high. I've got rays coming in and a vaulted ceiling there, and then the next one is right there. That chapel is literally right inside here behind that door, and I saw that door too in that remote viewing session. So and this was literally created as a grave marker for someone that was interned there. And in the descriptors that I was excuse me, in the descriptors that I wrote down burial, and I wrote down enshrouded and entombed. So it ends up being a very, these are just fun little sessions that kind of explored some old questions that I've had. But I would like to move on to some methodologies as we're moving forward. Steve, did you have any comments? We've been talking for a little while here.
No, I'm good.
Okay. All right then. Well, so I wanted to circle back. I know that I've talked about some of the things that you can do with it, and I've shown you a few little pictures that may or may not mean anything to people. But one of the things that that remote viewing does is, like I said, it connects you to energetically and emotionally, it connects you to your target, your project that you're working on, that you want to understand. And so as I described, you've got you don't know actually what you're remote viewing. You only know those 8 digits that are basically the address, the spatial interconnected address that you have assigned to a specific target. Now, usually a remote viewer is going to be completely blind, and And that's really the only way to do it. There's some people that have progressed to a point where they can do this, knowing what the target is, but we kind of feel like their information is always a little bit suspect. So pull up some more of my notes here. But somebody may be wondering where this all came about from. But as I mentioned, this was a military technique, and I'm going to pull this up so I can read some quotes here real quick. This was developed by Stanford Research Institute, spearheaded by Hal Puthoff and a man named Ingo Swann, and they were doing research on psychic abilities. And what had happened was the United States government, the intelligence community, had discovered that the Soviet Union was pouring money into a project that they were trying to harness, they were trying to enhance and explore the realm of psychic abilities for their spies, for their people. There's kind of an uber soldier concept in some of it. And so the United States government said, "Whoa, we can't be left behind. Even if this is fake, we want to know whether or not we need to be putting money here. We need to put some money here and either find out whether or not it's fake or find out if it's real. And if it's real, we need to exploit it." So they turned to Hal Puthoff, and he ran the Stanford Research Institute. And he was building off the work of people like Upton Sinclair and Rene Worcollier and a gentleman by the name of, excuse me, J.B. Rhine, and who were studying parapsychology in the early 20th century. And Hal Puthoff, which is, I did not know this when I started the research into my research into remote viewing. Hal Puthoff was an expert physicist in electrodynamics and theoretical studies of quantum vacuum states and gravitation. He did dissertations on cosmology and energy analysis. Steve, this would have been a guy that we would have loved to have at our conference. Even if he wasn't talking about remote viewing, he would have been a fantastic presenter at the conference, because boy howdy, we get into all of that, don't we, Steve?
Yeah, we've been into all of it, and I've heard of Hal Puthoff forever. Even back in the 80s when I got started, he was pretty famous. And they did have a movie on a lot of the stuff. I don't know if you ever remember it, the movie Stare at Goats.
Oh yes, yep. I read the book and I saw the movie.
Yeah,
and that was fun. That was fun. I think that anybody who saw the book, or excuse me, saw the movie, should read the book, because it really fleshes out a lot of what they talked about in the movie. A lot of backstory, a lot of deeper research into that. The one that really blew me away was when in the book, the guy's talking, the author's talking about a presentation with these military special forces guys, and the presenter had discovered built a machine that measured psychic and energetic potential in the human body. And he was blown away when he got into this presentation with all these military and special forces types. He was blown away by the fact that the vast majority of them had experienced psychic and angelic intervention in their lives. And when he could see this in the machine, and when he actually excuse me, when he actually started interviewing those people, a significant number of them said, "Yeah, I have had angelic intervention on the battlefield. There are forces that have kept me alive and let me survive." A lot of them had precognitive abilities, and that's how they'd survived their career in Green Berets, Special Forces, and whatnot. So Very interesting book, The Men Who Stare at Goats. Love that one.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so Hal Puthoff, like I said, working for the Stanford Research Institute, he partnered with Ingo Swann, and Ingo Swann is the man we call the the grandfather of remote viewing, and Ingo Swann was the one that did the remote viewing where he remote viewed the planet Jupiter, and before our space probes, I think it was the Viking space probe, ever flew by Jupiter, and he remote viewed the hydrogen that was inherent in the atmosphere of Jupiter. He also remote viewed the rings, and everybody said, "Oh, you're crazy. There's no rings on Jupiter." Well, come to find out, 10 years later, there are actually rings on Jupiter, and he saw that in his remote viewing session. Ingo Swann had a different technique. He did not use the technique that I've described, wherein the viewer targets the objective with numbers that are defined by the tasker. He actually would just lay down in the dark, and person would say, "We need you to remote view something," and he would go and he would remote view it, and it was really. Some people say it was akin to astral projection. Some people say it was true remote viewing without the protocols, because the protocols didn't exist at that point. But he would just send his consciousness out and go and remote view someplace, see something, and he would talk about his experiences, and all of his experiences were then recorded and transcribed. He was the one that remote view. He was given the task to remote view Mars a million years ago, and saw life forms there. And excuse me, Joe Rogan actually did a podcast where they were talking about Ingo Swann and his remote viewing prowess. When Ingo Swann passed away, he had one book on his nightstand, and that was actually the transdimensional remote viewing protocol developed by Prudence Calabrese and John Vivancos. So he was moving into a new protocol, even as he was transitioning out of this world. But my instructor was I took a class from Ed Dames, and that was pretty fun. But Ed Dames has interesting viewpoints on the world, and this is what it comes down to when you have a blind viewer versus somebody with preconceived notions. You don't want preconceived notions when you're doing remote viewing. You have to be committed to the truth, even if it's an uncomfortable truth. You have to be committed to the truth, and so that's why I really resonate with the protocols. Maybe I can put that picture back up. Hold on, let me see if I can find it here. Do. Let's see if I can find that picture. Apologies. Nope, not that one. Not that one. There we go.
I have a question here, Vernon.
Yes, sir.
You say you can't have you're no preconception, but if you kind of have an idea of what you're looking for, isn't that a preconception in and of itself?
Yeah, and that's why it's really difficult for a remote viewer to do this on their own. That's why I created my own little protocol, wherein, like I said, I wrote out my randomized numbers. I wrote in my targets. I printed them off on these sheets with the random numbers on the front, and then the target on the back. and I put it into a folder, and I forgot about it. I had no memory of what was actually on that list, because I don't have that good a memory to remember 8 random digits. And I never stared too long at the actual column where the random digits were generated. So it makes it difficult for a single remote viewer. By giving myself about 6 months to get some distance on it, and creating a target pool. I created a target pool of over 150 targets that I just couldn't remember what they all were. So that's how I got away from the preconceived notion about what I was targeting. Plus, my interests really varied. I went from remote viewing ancient structures and trying to identify, is this natural, is this man-made, I remote viewed those little dodecahedrons that they find all over Brittany and all the way into Germany. Those hollow dodecahedrons with the little knobs on them made out of brass. Nobody can figure out what they are. I remote viewed those. So I created this massive target pool so that I could move away from having any preconceived notion about what I was targeting. If you want to do this, if you want, let's say, so that actually segues into my next what I wanted to talk about. A remote viewer has a commitment to the truth. It may be an uncomfortable truth, it may be an inconvenient truth, but we have a commitment to the truth. And so we're going to write down what we experience, what we see, our senses, the sensation, and then as we get deeper into this template, it even goes into emotional mindsets and aesthetic influence and whatnot. But that's a deeper thing we'll get to. So let's say, so here's where remote viewing is really going to shine for people like us. Let's say we hear about an inventor that invented something pretty amazing and pretty profound, and then passes away, and no one knows whether or not, no one knows how it was done. Nobody knows, honestly, nobody knows whether or not it was real. Let's say, let's pick one that's probably not super controversial. I know that some people have notions about it, but let's think about Tesla's car. Let's think about Tesla's electric vehicle that he was supposed to run on radiant energy. Now, some people swear that this is a reality, and some Tesla researchers have said, no, we've found absolutely no verifiable evidence that this car exists, or that it did exist, that he ever ran a vehicle on radiant energy. Okay. So remote viewing can help us figure that out, but we have to be really, really careful with how we remote view that target. Because let me give you an example. My instructor, John Vivanco, he didn't do this in my class, but he did it in other classes. At the beginning of the class, one of the exercises that he would do is he would have each student create what they call a mind palace. You would create a construct in your mind, and you'd start decorating it. You create the architecture. You'd create this palace inside of your mind, and everybody's going to be unique because everybody has different experiences. And so each student would create this mind palace, and then at the end of the class, he would have other students target your mind palace, see whether or not, excuse me, my seat is falling down, to see what you created in your own mind. and it worked. The other students, without knowing anything about your mind palace, could actually see your mind palace. So remote viewing literally allowed a person to see a creative structure inside of somebody else's mind. So we have to be really careful about this. So let's say we're going to remote view Tesla's car. and I give you a target that says, I want you to remote view the electric car that Tesla created. And you know what? You're going to remote view the electric car that Tesla created, even if he didn't actually create that car in this reality. Okay. So it gets a little complicated. So what we have to do is we have to be very, very careful when it comes to our targeting and how we word our targeting. Our target is going to, our targeting verbiage, our wording is going to narrow the scope of our mental connection, and we're going to be able to keep it in this reality if we do it right. So for instance, if we wanted to know the truth of Tesla's car, we would actually have to do several different sessions, and we're going to identify where the urban legend of Tesla's electric car came from. We're going to excuse me, identify the truth. We would use wording in the target saying you will only view the truth of whether or not Tesla created an electric car and ran it on radiant energy. And if we get concrete, real feedback, or excuse me, real data in our remote viewing session, as I showed those pictures and the data on the side, and I've left out about a dozen of those steps because each one gets deeper and deeper as you get more and more connected to the target. If we get real concrete data, then we can start to believe at that point that car was real. But if the data still is nebulous and kind of out there, then we can start to understand the fact that maybe that car is a mythos, a legend that has been created. So, excuse me. So we can actually use it to find that level of information. It's a lot easier if you know the person, or if the person is saying something. Let's say you've got an inventor that says, "Hey guys, I did this." Okay, where's the tech? Oh, I'm not going to show it to you, but I did this. I've created this. Okay, prove it. He said, "Oh, I don't have to prove it to you, but I did this." Well, that one's easy. That one's actually pretty easy to do with remote viewing, because then you can say, you can actually task yourself or task a remote viewer and say, what was this person doing at the time he said he made this tech? And you can deep down, and then you can even go further. You can say, what was the mindset of this person when he told me that he created this tech? And you can do a deep dive into the reality of the situation, and you can prove, you know what? Oh my God, that tech he actually created something. Well, then let's find out what it is. There's a piece of tech that's on my list. It's in my 150 targets that I'm working on, and that is excuse me, Lamar Porter's cold electricity device. And he had this thing bundled up in a little white box, little aluminum shelled box that he painted white, and he said, "I don't want it to be a black box, I want it to be a white box." And he created cold electricity, and I held it in my hands. I held a glowing light bulb in my hands, and there was no heat. And I took that thing with exposed wires and I plunged my hand into a bucket of water, and it didn't shock me. And there was no electricity that flowed and electrocuted anybody. And yet it produced light, and it produced motive force, and it was cold. And I know that it existed, but he would never share that with anyone. And he was he controlled that dissemination of that information. If you wanted to see what was inside of it, you had to sign an NDA that basically signed your life away. And it wasn't someplace I could go at the time, because it just wasn't someplace I could go. So he ended up passing away, and his tech was torn apart by his widow, and we don't know how he created it. So it's in my list of things to do. It's in my list of targets to work on to find out what the actual tech was that produced the cold electricity. That's that actually segues into my next point, is that you're never going to get all the information in just one session. Okay. You have to do multiple sessions. So I actually have a filing folder where I've done excuse me, first pass, and then once I've done it 2 times, I move it into the second pass, and then I'll move it into the third pass. But I have to work through the entire process, or the entire bunch of targets, before I can start moving on the second and third passes, because I kind of have an idea what's in that first pass folder. So it's I have to move through them all before I can move on. But that's the inherent flaw with a single remote viewer. So how do we get around that? We get around that by creating a team and putting together people that are going to that have been trained or are willing to learn the process, so that we can actually target these things blind and learn the information that we have to learn. There's so many, like plasma batteries and superluminal energies. Excuse me. That one I actually did a session on how to propel energy beyond the speed of light. And it was very interesting because I don't know entirely what I'm seeing yet. That's why I have to do multiple passes, multiple sessions on the target. But I was seeing a DNA helix, which was really, really interesting. Kind of goes back to Gaio Bolensky talking about Poincaré's conjecture and his emitter on his phaser technology. But that'll be next time. I'll have some of that. I'll have more of that data at the TeslaTech conference, because, like I said, this is kind of a work in progress. So if you're creating a team, circling back, if you're creating a team, then you can say, okay, let's say I'm the researcher. I've got this project, and I'm hitting a brick wall. I can create a task, and I can give that to a group of people, and they can give me feedback. They can give me their sessions, and I'll be able to decode the information that is that they've remote viewed, and I have the knowledge of the situation. They have given me data, and then I can figure out a path forward based off of their data. So it makes it a lot easier if you actually have a team that you can work with. It's not entirely impossible to do it by yourself. Like I said, I've remote viewed over 100 targets that excuse me, that I was blind to, and gotten some very interesting data. So Steve, did you have anything to jump in? I was going to pull up a few more examples here if you wanted to.
Well, I kind of think, that a lot of engineers kind of already do this remote viewing stuff, kind of. Like if you have a really tough problem that you just can't figure out, then a lot of times, like I would go away or go to sleep. Then when I wake up, I'd have the answer. So I'm thinking that might be a form of remote viewing that a lot of these engineering types, or like me, would be more familiar with, as opposed to going using a unknown as a starting point, So that's what I like to add. So.
No, I think that you're hitting the nail on the head. There's so many ways to gather information from the void. There's so many ways to gather information and bring it into our consciousness. And excuse me, I think that some of us do it subconsciously, and some of us do it with intent and deliberation. I remember reading about Edison doing. I think he put some ball bearings in his hand, and he would fall asleep with his hand resting on the on the arm of his chair while he was thinking about the problem. And when he would fall asleep, the bearings would fall out of his hand and fall onto a metal plate, and it would jolt him awake. And it would and his the problem that he was working on, he would remember his subconscious impressions about how to solve the problem. And he used that as an engine, as a tool for his creations. So so one of the things that we learn about as we get deeper into remote viewing is that there's methods to actually entrain your brain. We use binaural beats, and we cycle through. We go down to the alpha state, and we go down to the theta state, and we come back up to the alpha state. And we're training our brain to move through the states, because different states receive different types of information. And so we use different binaural beats to facilitate that process. We just got a couple minutes left, so one of the interesting things I wanted to just to share a little bit. A while back, I went to I visited with a mad scientist who was who also practiced alchemy, and he showed me this. This little vial with some water in it, and there was what looked like a little tiny crystal floating on top of that water. And I thought, okay, well, the crystal is, the surface tension of the water is either keeping it up, or he says, no, you don't understand. And he took a little like a wooden Q-tip deal, and he pushed the crystal into the center of the vial. He turned it sideways, pushed the crystal in the center of the vial, and started rotating it. And son of a gun, that crystal pushed the water away to either side of the test tube. It was pretty profound. He says that right there is the philosopher's stone that he created. So of course I had to do that as a remote viewing project. And it was interesting. I actually got this image of a tiny, what looks like a tiny flame on a surface of a liquid. But then in my final sketch, I got this here, and it's so much more. All of the descriptors, the words in there. Let's see, is that showing up very well? There we go. Sorry. The descriptors in there are showing like waves of gravity and energy. It is literally putting out diamagnetic energy that was keeping it afloat. And as I went deeper and deeper into the process, I got void-based, reflected in infinitude, traces of time and space, infinite multiplied into the finite multiplied into the infinite. I thought that was really profound, because the alchemists all talk about this, how the philosopher's stone is actually a pattern, what's the word? Darn it all. A fractal of the rest of reality. And so, and I actually had the word fractal in there somewhere. So fun stuff. I wanted to throw out a few caveats before the end of our session. One of the things is, when you're creating your team, when you're doing this training, there's a lot of target pools. You can create your own target pool, as I've described. You can go online. There's a lot of websites with reputable target pools. One of the things you want to avoid is letting somebody that you don't know or who has no experience creating targets. You want to avoid getting targets from them, because you'll end up with some weird experiences. You might have there's a big push in the remote viewing field for remote viewers to remote view someone's let's say alien abduction, or another one that floats around every once in a while is that you will remote view your death. and that can be pretty traumatic. I remember when I was taking a class from Ed Dames. Our final remote view project was to remote view the sinking of the Titanic. Now, I'm a very empathic person, and so that was actually pretty traumatic, a pretty traumatic experience. I had these images and impressions of a structure and pride and ego, and I had the terror when people realized that they'd crashed into an iceberg, that they were going to die. I actually experienced, and I drew this out in my sketches, the people sinking underwater, being dragged underwater by the Titanic sinking, and then and I was literally I was out of breath. I was freezing cold. I was experiencing this, and then at the end, when the people finally died from either drowning or suffocation or hypothermia, there was this intense peace that came from it, and it was very powerful, but it was pretty traumatic. So never accept a target from someone that you don't know or that you don't trust. The other thing that you need to be aware of are two terms. The first one we call creepypasta. You want to watch out for creepypasta, because creepypasta is going to be things like the Mothman or the Chupacabra, Bigfoot. Some people consider Bigfoot creepypasta. Some people consider Bigfoot high strangeness. High strangeness is the other one. So with your targets, you might be remote viewing the Eiffel Tower, or you might be remote viewing, excuse me, as I said, those little dodecahedron shapes that they find all over Europe and Britain. And you're getting this solid feedback. You're getting this stuff that you can identify with physically, and then somebody will come along and say, "Hey, I want you to remote view the nature of God," and that gets really interesting. We call that high strangeness. We don't you don't go there. You don't really go there until you've been doing this for a long time. I think Prudence Calabrese did a session that's on YouTube about her experience doing that. John Vivanco remote viewed the angels that were seen during the Missouri tornadoes, and certain events that people had guardian angels watching over them. That's what we call high strangeness, and it can be a beautiful experience. It can be pretty intense and scary too. So stick with the physical stuff. Stick with the maybe the energy research, the physical, tangible engineering stuff. Don't go to high strangeness, and don't go to creepypasta. If you're not comfortable walking down a dark alley in the middle of a dark city in reality, don't walk down the dark alleys in remote viewing, because it gets pretty interesting. So that's I think that's all I've got for tonight. How are we doing, Steve? You still there?
I'm still here.
Okay, cool deal. So
Yeah.
getting ready for the conference. Like I said, I'm in the infancy of creating this as a presentation, but I'm going to have a lot more science remote viewing sessions between now and the conference, and I'll be outlining the next steps. What I'm actually, because I've actually got an end game. I've actually got an end game that I'm using this towards, and I'll be outlining that at the conference, because I'd like to get some like-minded people looped into this process, because you need a team to go. You need a team to go deep. It's like they say, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So I think that's something we're going to explore at the conference this year.
Okay, then we have a question here. Where can people find you, or how can they contact you, I guess? Or
Well, my email is vernonroth@hushmail.com. VERNONROTH@hushmail.com. And that's really the best way to get a hold of me. I don't have a YouTube channel, and I got off social media a couple years back. There's a fantastic um, YouTube short or YouTube presentation by Chase Hughes about how social media is socially engineering us. And I was feeling that subconsciously, so I got off social media. But I do respond to emails, so that's a good way to do it.
I think social media eats up a lot of time. I have a Facebook page, but I don't have time to tend to it. YouTube is about the only thing I really get on. But I'd like to remind everyone about the conference coming up, and they get signed up for it and become a member of the TeslaTech YouTube channel here. $9.99 a month. It really helps us out. I can't emphasize that enough. But the conference is the main thing. Go to our webpage. You can sign up there if you have a problem, because we've been having problems, some issues. Call me. My phone number is there, 520-252-0374. Call me if you want to get the discount and and you have a problem. Just give me a call. I'm available pretty much 24/7. Even though I'm moving and that, I'll stop what I'm doing and write the stuff down. I'll try to remember to carry a piece of paper with me. So yeah, come to the conference and you'll meet Vernon there. You know, and you meet, like I say, it's a great place to meet people. Well, that's how I met Vernon. I would have never met Vernon if we didn't have conferences.
That's true.
And
Well,
so
I appreciate you knowing you for so long, Steve. You've been a great blessing to me and all my work. So yay.
years,
Yep.
20 plus, 24, something like that.
Yep.
And like I say, when you come to our conference, you meet people. You're going to meet salt of the earth people that will be your lifelong friends. So it's worth it just for that. It's kind of considered like going to a family reunion. Uh,
It really is. It really is a family reunion. Even if you've never been there, it's a family reunion because it's a family you didn't know you had.
yeah, and you'll be surprised. You come and run into people like, wow, it's like I've known you all my life. It's just amazing. Yeah, and
Yep.
so anyway, with that, I'm going to call it a night, and I don't know what I'm going to do next week, but hopefully by next week we'll be completely moved in. So
Nice.
anyway, thanks again, and we'll see you next week. And thank you all for being here. Yeah.
Peace out, y'all.
So.